But let's maybe start first with exploring what are we even talking about when we say integration and facilitation, because that might not be terms that people are familiar with.
Or think of them in different contexts. And again, I do think there are two components in modern leadership that are overlooked. Undervalued, I was going to say, but I take that back. I think overlooked.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Maybe they're seen as more soft skills. We've had conversations about, are people hired to be managers and leadership is just a plus along the way? And as a manager, are these two skills that you need to manage and get the work done and produce outputs if you simplify it down? Or do folks think of these two items as kind of back office pieces, So I don't know what it is. And I'm sure I couldn't find anything out there that really could articulate it. But I do think in my experience and working with a bunch of our clients, I've been noticing this trend of these two skill sets. And when they're put together, it's like, wow, it really takes these big ambitions and puts it into action in a pretty cool way and keeps everyone aligned. So maybe I'll start by digging into integration, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on facilitation or facilitative leadership. But for me, integration, quite simplistically, is like connecting the dots, right? It's seeing the patterns, looking for the patterns, being aware that different patterns could exist. If you think of it like a puzzle, you've got all your puzzle pieces around. You start to put your border out first, then you got to look for some similarities in color and look and shape, that could fit together. And it's ultimately, as a leader, I see that as connecting priorities, strategy, people, system structures, bringing all of that together, which some might say is like, wow, that's really complicated, right? Like that feels like a lot and is going to overcomplicate. And here we talk about making complex things clear. Yeah. But I actually think this is a skill that turns complexity into clarity. Right. There's a lot that happens to get an organization going. And when I think of my own experience, when I go to an integrative mindset first, it helps give me a lot of clarity and the clarity people need around me. So I think of it kind of like, you said conductor, like an orchestra.
Yeah.
Right? You've got all your different musicians, all the different instruments, all the different sections. And somehow they all need to come together to make one clear sound and a beautiful piece of music that people want to come back to see, are going to write great reviews about. So think about integration as kind of that orchestra conductor that's bringing all of those pieces and understands the strengths and how they all fit together, but isn't afraid to give feedback at the same time. But
stop the music.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like in a professional setting, project managers, a lot of their role is like innate to integration. Their job is to get from A to B, connect all the dots, and make sure everybody has what they need to keep moving forward and build this beautiful puzzle together. So there's some roles that I think it is very innate and key to what they do, and some that maybe it's less critical or less obvious the need, or that they're even doing it from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's also something, I think you said, like, you can learn it, or we alluded to that a little bit, but it also just might come more natural to some to see all those connections and kind of like, even without thinking, it might be how your brain works for some people, right? Curious, because the word integration, I think we have been bringing it up in earlier episodes too, in the context of like an integrator as a role. Mm-hmm. Is there a difference for you?
Yeah, I think there are some roles where it's like the name of the role, like an integrator. And some other examples that come to mind of this skill coming to life in some of our work that we've done is with young organizations. So they're growing, they're getting either from that startup to scale up mode and had been building quite organically, very passionate about what they're doing, probably founder led. And kind of putting the pieces together. We need this now. We need this now. But then it comes to a place that you're large enough that it's oh, how does this all fit together? It's no longer a team of two or a team of one where you only really have to talk to yourself or you can kind of read each other's minds. But how do you get to that stage of 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, 30 people, and your clients are growing that way, and probably your systems are a bit different? How do you connect all of those pieces together? So our work with Park Street is a good example of that, where they were early on. And we're like, what are these building blocks that we need? And how do we put all of these pieces together, merging both the education side as well as the business charity operations side together. And I think some of those connecting the dots, asking yourself, how is the knee bone connected to the hip bone? And again, I do think this comes in neatly to some folks where that's just how their brain works. They want to see the patterns and how the systems are and all the pieces fit together. But I do think a lot of people just asking yourselves those questions. Okay, what else is dependent on this? And if I do X, what's the cause and effect of it? Just starting to think through how things are connected and what those patterns may be.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned kind of that you see this a lot, or we've seen this with clients that are growing and scaling. And there is a bit of this tipping point, right? Where with 3 or 4 people, it might still kind of happen naturally. Yeah. But at 15, you might kind of, the need for someone to take on that role or kind of having more clarity around that role becomes kind of, I think, more important. Yeah. The orchestra, I think, is an interesting one because as you were talking about it, I felt like, but an orchestra, I mean, I've never been a conductor, so I honestly, I don't know how they do it. But I was wondering, would they have a piece of music in mind that they're going to play, and they are going to make sure that this orchestra plays that piece of music, which I'm sure happens. They rehearse and they do that, right? But then I'm always really impressed and I think that also exists, right? Where it's an orchestra, and they just kind of jam, if you call it that, in an orchestra. So it is kind of really starting to get in tune and create this harmony, which I think, long story short, that is where it starts entering this territory of facilitation. Totally. Right? So that is about not what you're doing, but how you're doing it. And moving, shifting from more of the command and control, authority-based, control-based, as I said, to more of like collaboration, more of like this organic collective, letting it be with brilliant people. Like every team is a group of brilliant minds in a room, right? And it is how do you tap into everyone's unique value and bring that together for something larger? And that to me is that component of facilitative leadership. So it is, I really see it as a leadership approach that guides teams and organizations to effectively collaborate with one another. It's this approach to create psychological safety where everyone feels comfortable and safe to speak up, to add their piece of the puzzle to the puzzle. Curiosity, inquiry, enablement. I think maybe enablement is versus authority and control. Enablement would be synonymous maybe to facilitation. The other way that I've seen it described is in this HBR article where it is the super facilitator, where I think it already gets into the territory of integration and facilitation merged together. But in that article, this concept of collective intelligence is introduced. And I really love how it's defined there, where it is the group's ability to reason, to innovate, and to solve problems together. So it's truly not reliant on one person in the room knowing the answer and everyone looking at that person, but truly tapping into everyone's expertise, bring diversity of thought, bringing that together. So there is diversity of expertise, lived experiences, creating equitable contributions, and kind of having that come out of the group.
Because I think to your point earlier, like a lot of people would probably reflect on some of their best group experiences, whether work, school, sports, whatever your hobbies may be. And it's usually that is hard to describe, but flow, I think, is a good word for it right now.
Yeah. And you mentioned sports, and that was actually an example that I was thinking of as we were prepping for this episode. I used to play field hockey, and to me, there were, and I know like in basketball, it's probably like you're a point guard or something, but in field hockey, it's the center midfielder. To me, who should be the facilitative leader. But there were always very distinct approaches to it. center midfielder was either the best player of the field and would kind of go off on their own, score a goal.
Yeah.
Short-term success, if you ask me. I always loved seeing kind of the teams where the center midfielder was the facilitative leader.
Cool.
The person who was kind of strategizing how the game would play out, would be fully kind of aware of where everyone's at, what everyone's skill sets are, what they're good at, how they work together, set someone up who might not be having their best kind of game that day, set them up for an easy goal so that they kind of create confidence again or get confident again.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of that kind of attunement, the emotions, the seeing the things behind what every eye can see, and starting to kind of have that all play out and work together in a way that drives that team success. So that was one that came to my mind, and I think that is again very aligned with how they describe it as a super facilitator in that HBR article. It's around attunement, communication. So as a center midfielder, it's also like coaching the people and where do you need to kind of run next and whatever. And distribution. So distribution of ownership, roles you play, what value you add into the game in this case.
Very cool. What position did you play?
Sometimes I was the center midfield.
Oh, there we go.
I was often kind of on the right side of the field. But I think it was one of my contributions to the team is that systems thinking, seeing kind of where the person would move next and kind of trying to avoid that, what you always see in kids team sports where it's wherever the ball is, everyone just gravitates there, right? Yeah. So trying to kind of coach the team in like what's the strategic play here?
Yeah. And I love the, putting these two together, thinking about it, it's designing collaboration and connection so that as a group, there's like better outcomes moving faster together to get that. And I think we have to acknowledge at least the role that these skills might play in different organizations or cultures. And this is where I think situational leadership comes into play, that there's a time and a place for these. So I just don't want people to be like, I am just going to be the center midfielder all day, every day. Yeah. It's like, there is that reflect, be aware of the situation you're in, the context, the people you're with, and maybe these need to scale up or scale down. I think we've done a great job at expressing our enthusiasm for these two skills, adding them to the toolkit. Yeah. But I'm curious to know, like, what's the cost when someone doesn't do this?
Yeah, that's a good question. And kind of a time where I've been thinking about that a lot is when I was in a previous job and really kind of started looking into like teal organizations, self-managing teams. And there was a point where I questioned, like, does a team even need a leader? And what is a leader, right? Like what type of leader? So I think through that experience, what I've learned is I was set to kind of build a self-managing team, which is already a bit of a contrast in itself, right? Like how do you design or build a team? But what I've noticed there is that at the start, I kind of played that role of a facilitator and kind of having everyone feel comfortable to add their unique skill set to the point that within that same context, within that system of people, I could have stepped out and they would work kind of in flow together. But as soon as something in the environment would change or one person changed, that system changes too, right? Yeah. So my conclusion from that kind of experience was like, ultimately, you do need that integrator for everyone to feel comfortable, to feel that safe space, to sometimes even recognize their added value and become aware of it so that they can really make the most of it and make sure that the team gets to benefit from it the most. So there's something around creating that trust, that safety, a sense of belonging, acknowledgement that without the role being present might not exist. Maybe quickly back to the does a team then need a leader? That is another episode maybe. Because I think what I was trying to solve was that inequity or like, and it could be an equally valuable role in a team, be the facilitator, right? The other thing that I think is a risk of the facilitative leadership style is, or not having the facilitative leadership style is kind of having decisions just going around in circles, or some people in the room might think a decision was made and then 2 weeks later someone gets back to it and is like,
Right.
I don't recall that being made, because I do see that as a role of the facilitator integrator to really make it clear what are we solving for here, and to make sure that everyone again is aligned once a decision is being made. I think a risk of the facilitative style is it becoming too much of a democracy potentially, where it's like you obviously want to give everyone a
consensus,
voice, and maybe you start building that consensus. But again, I also that is the role I think of the facilitator to sense that and to challenge that and kind of bring that up, and then again have the group solve for that. See that as a bit of a risk, so not kind of the democracy or decision making by consensus or democracy. And again, just not, there's something situational about it, right? Sometimes a crisis situation might ask for a command and control style. So it is, like you said earlier, adding the skill sets to your toolkit, not necessarily throwing everything else out and fully focusing on this.
And I think of some of our clients or folks that we have conversations with, and as a common piece is, we have so many silos. We just operate in silos, but the right hand doesn't speak to the left hand. There's redundancy. Like these two lights, I flip these switches on in my brain, ding, ding. Like those are some of those words that I hear that I'm like, oh, we need to dig into this a little bit more, right? So that's the other side of not having these. Those are some of those effects. And if your organization's designed in silos, it's even more necessary to do that. But that's as you were talking something, I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard that. And that's when those light switches.